As a huge fan of 3D Mario, I've always wondered what it'd be like to have our favorite 2D Mario games, but in a 3D space. What would things have looked like if Nintendo would have just said, hey, forget Mario 64 being the first one, we're immediately jumping out the gate and having a 3D game with the original Super Mario Brothers. Let's just pretend that that was a possibility. But I guess I just want to ask the question, if Nintendo was to put in all of their assets to a full 3D Mario experience using everything from the 2D Mario games themselves, what would these games look like and how would they play? Well, that's my job for you guys today. But enough yapping around, let's get into what a 2D Mario game would look like in a 3D Mario space. Of course, we have to start off with the original Super Mario Brothers. Now, this game is pretty bare bones when you look at it compared to some of the rest on this list. So how would Nintendo actually create a full game in 3D? Well, I feel like they couldn't really, because it would just be probably lots of grass fields and just random blocks. That's about it. So if I had to just really think of what Nintendo would do here, it'd probably be something around the 3D Land, 3D World fixed linear camera type of situation, where you essentially just went through a 3D version of the 2D levels. Yeah, just think the original game, but in 3D. There'd be tons of platforming challenges, but you pretty much just have to reach the end of the level and get the goal. If you think about it, Mario 3D World is technically kind of just like a 3D version of kind of the classic Super Mario Brothers games. So yeah, I feel like 3D World would already fit that bill, but if I had to create one from scratch, you'd probably still have the 8-bit assets and everything, but obviously expanded upon for a 3D game. Super Mario Bros. 2, in my opinion, would probably make for one of the coolest 3D world style of Mario games. The levels and worlds themselves are very unique, since this whole game, spoiler alert, takes place in a dream. You know, I think everybody knows that. But yes, it'd be really cool to see like a giant level with giant tall hills and the flying carpets that you could jump on, and just tons of stuff like that would be awesome. And I think with all the different cave networks and underground passages, this probably wouldn't be something like a 3D sandbox Mario, but more along the lines, like I said, of 3D Land and 3D World. I definitely think that'd be the best path to go, where you still just initially have to reach the end of the level. And man, I think this would actually work out pretty cool. The included ability to pluck things out of the ground and pick up enemies, you don't necessarily need items in this 3D game. Being able to pick up pretty much any enemy by jumping on his head and carrying him around in order to throw him at things, you can even hide some secrets around the stage, like certain collectibles that you have to find, or maybe like every level has a specific plant that you have to pluck somewhere and you have to find it in all the nooks and crannies, allowing for exploration even though this is a linear 3D Mario experience. Hey, 3D World allows all the playable characters that you have in Super Mario Bros. 2, so it already kind of lines up. Literally just using the 3D World game style to recreate this game would be phenomenal. In fact, Nintendo, make this remake happen. You have most of the assets already and the characters and the engine. Just now, add everything else from Super Mario Bros. 2 and Subcon and you're good to go. Super Mario Bros. 3 would be pretty amazing in 3D. They could go one of two routes, having more of a classic style, classic sprites and animations, maybe just making it in 3D from its 2D life. I actually think it'd be really cool if it was kind of just like a pop-out stage version of the 2D game, which still would keep it in 2D though, so it wouldn't necessarily be 3D, because the game overall is based on a stage play, so it'd be cool to kind of keep that vibe, kind of like Paper Mario the Thousand Year Doors battle system, where everything takes place on a stage, and you can probably have the curtains and the stage around the outsides of the level that you're playing, but once again, like I said, this would still keep the game in 2D. And my other option is that Mario Bros. 3 actually has 8 kingdoms, and it would be really cool if they just made this into a full-fledged 3D Mario game. And I'm talking a 3D sandbox Mario game, allowing you to fully explore each region in many open worlds, just same way as Super Mario 64, Sunshine, and Odyssey. That would be so awesome. With the amount of variety in each world, with the world being in the sky, clouds, or ice, snow region, or maybe a region where things are huge, obviously with giant land, or pipe land where there's pipes and you could have lots of underground sections of the level. There's so many different options. I mean, truly, it would be pretty spectacular to see something like that come true. And then fight a Koopaling in 3D at the end of each level would just be as amazing as well, considering the fact we haven't fought a single Koopaling in 3D yet. I know technically, even though we're expecting this to come soon, this genre does not exist yet, but I think Super Mario Land would work best in just an overall open world 3D Mario game. In this game, there are 4 kingdoms in the world of Sarasa Land. known as the Barabuda, the Muda, the Easton, and the Chai kingdoms. So with there only being 4, I feel like it'd be too small to have a 3D linear Mario game or something like a sandbox. So maybe just a giant open world that connects all 4 of these kingdoms in giant regions would be really cool. A giant desert that's the central area of this entire game, and it just branches off to the other parts, like a Japanese inspired one with the bamboo gardens and stuff that we can kind of see in the 2D game. I would love to see that fully realized with like cherry blossom trees and everything in a Mario game. Be beautiful. So essentially just think of Tostarena, the Sand Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey, just extremely expanded on, but like the whole game is based around the desert solely. It would definitely be different, but interesting for a brand new 3D Mario game, let alone an open world one. And I feel like the same thing could be said about Super Mario World, where most of the game just takes place on this dinosaur island. So imagine if you could freely explore the entire island any way that you want. You can go all the way up to the mountains and all the way back down through the trees and the jungles and down to the shore of the island, and pretty much just see tons of new enemies and creatures and characters, all dinosaur themed obviously from Super Mario World. Once again, also fighting the Koopalings in 3D would be really cool, but since there's not a whole lot of diversity within Super Mario World and most of the game, pretty much all the game, takes place on this one island, I think it'd be best if this was just an open world 3D Mario game. And once again, I guess you could technically pull from Super Mario Odyssey and say something like the Cascade Kingdom would look really cool if it was just a fully fleshed out 3D Mario game, where you're fully able to explore a gigantic tropical island with tons of silly dinosaur creatures and stuff. Oh, it would be so good. Now, Super Mario Land 2 has 7 zones, so I feel like it would work better with either a 3D sandbox Mario game or what would probably be better, more of a 3D linear experience. One thing I definitely would do is mess with the game's maps. So in Mario 3D World, in each world, you can actually run around the area and find some secret hidden things like an extra 1-up or a slot machine thing. Imagine if you could actually run around and interact with things and make these maps more awesome. Like for instance, the macro zone is pretty much just a house. Imagine if you had like a little 3D area where you could run through the house and like there's little buttons or portals or little spaces that you can stand on in order to actually enter that level and go into the stage. But man, it'd be so cool to kind of like explore these little hub worlds, because a lot of them are pretty cool, including one which is the Mario Zone, which is literally just a like robot toy of Mario. I think that'd be so fun to play around with. If you played Mario Land 2, you'll know that the theming of the levels are very unique and it's different for a Mario game, including one level that's pretty much about going through a giant jungle with a giant tree, and there's even one that's kind of taking you through a haunted Halloween themed town, and I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, in fact, I really would love to see some type of creepy haunted, Halloween style of Mario level for a 3D Mario game. I think that'd be pretty cool. I know you have Boo's Haunt in Super Mario 64, but you spend most of the time inside a giant old mansion and in the basement, so I really would like it like in a giant outside area would be amazing. So what is Space Theme World, which is also in this game, and once again in Super Mario Odyssey you do technically have the moon, but it's not really a full world or a level. It's just kind of the moon. There's not a lot up there, and most of the level actually is just for the end of the game to get into the chapel and stop the wedding between Peach and Bowser. So yeah, I would actually love a fully space-themed world with like alien craft and maybe even a space station that you can explore and stuff. That would be pretty daggone amazing. Now, what about New Super Mario Brothers? This one is pretty strange, and I feel like it would obviously also be Mario 3D World styled or even Mario Galaxy styled. Just something very linear would be the best. And honestly, if you ask me, I feel like Mario 3D Land and even Mario 3D World are already like 3D versions of New Super Mario Brothers in a way. It's just kind of like the basic enemies that we've already seen with some new ones as well. But yeah, with some, your grassland, your desert, your jungle, your lava. You have the levels that you'd probably have in a 2D Mario game for New Super Mario Brothers. And I'm grouping all this New Super Mario Brothers games. I know there's like 3 or 4 of them now. But yeah, putting them all in one basket. But something is pretty interesting about this, and this is something that I've been trying to talk about a lot for it maybe upcoming 3D Mario game that's an open world, is maybe just using the map from New Super Mario Bros. U and creating that into one giant interconnected open world would be phenomenal. And it's really all I really want out of a 3D Mario game, really. Something like that would be awesome, just to seamlessly go to the desert area, the jungle, the beach, at your own leisure. You want to go up there to the mountain, to the snow world, you absolutely can. That is something that I would love for a fully fledged open world game. So I almost hope they just take what they did with New Super Mario Bros. U's map and just expand it into an actual overworld. I would love that. And using various power-ups throughout the new Super Mario Bros. Series would be so much fun to use in 3D, like the mini mushroom to go in like little cracks and crevices we find, or maybe even the penguin suit to slide along the 3D terrain. Oh man, that movement would be awesome, going down hills and stuff in the snow region, or maybe even using a propeller mushroom to fly up in the air and like reach tall areas that you otherwise couldn't reach, or maybe climbing up to a super high tree or a super tall mountain in the game and using the squirrel suit and just gliding over the landscape. Oh man, that would be awesome. Now honestly, the same exact thing can be said about Super Mario Bros. Wonder. You could say, look at this map, it's all interconnected. What if they just made a giant open world out of it? And they definitely could. But I also seeing Super Mario Wonder definitely being a Mario 3D Land, 3D World, or even Galaxy style of game for sure. And to be completely honest with you, I think all of the 3D styles would technically work for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. But the world map of Mario Wonder actually kind of has a 3D vibe to it. So imagine if they fully expanded on that and just made a 3D Mario game out of it. How would the wonder effects actually work in a 3D space? Well, I believe this would be one of the coolest parts. So think of Super Mario 3D World, but with more stylized levels and colors and, you know, obviously level design, and obviously the Wonder Flower, where if you touch a Wonder Flower, it will completely change. Maybe the terrain can move in a 3D space, the moving pipes, but in 3D. Essentially things that we've seen in the 2D, obviously Mario Wonder game itself, but seeing those things happen in a 3D world would be awesome. Maybe teleporting Mario to a different area, having him fall out the sky, changing the water to lava, flipping the lava in the land. There's just so much they could do. So yeah, I think seeing a 3D Mario Wonder is something that I actually kind of hope that mechanic is implemented in the future. Like, even if it's not a Wonder Flower, but something that drastically changes the world when you collect something. And I know a lot of people will be like, this is just Wonder. So they probably should just go with the Wonder Flower, but they don't have to, because the Wonder Flower is kind of tied to the Flower Kingdom, and this next game probably will be in a different area, but maybe some type of warp, some type of reality change, or something that could actually change the way the world looks and keep that world evolving. And I think that's what made Mario Wonder so good, is that it continued to evolve the world. So that is exactly what every 2D Mario game could look like in 3D. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. This video was a lot of fun to think about and conjure up ideas for something like this, so let me know if there's any other wacky what if type of videos you guys want to see for the Mario series or any other series in the future. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe before you head out, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See ya guys.